Coming to you live from across the country, this is Person to Person. Tonight, navigating the college application process with your hosts Melissa Jones and Katherine Schneider, and special guest Dr. Toni Sondergeld.
All right, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to the second session of Person to Person, the AEOP webinar series. So the goal of this program is really to give you some useful information about STEM, study, and career advice. So my name is Melissa Jones.
So I'm Katherine Schneider. A little bit about my background. I just received my Master's of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering from Colorado School of Mines, and I also have a Bachelor's in Engineering Physics from Mines. During my time there, I had an internship at Los Alamos National Laboratories, as well as Sierra Nevada Corporation, which is an aerospace company headquartered in Denver, Colorado. And I'm just about to move on to a new position as a patent agent at a law firm called Holland & Hart. So this is going to be a fun webinar as I've kind of gone through the college experience, and then I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Yeah, so hello. I'm I guess, incoming freshman at Harvard University next year. So I just finished up my senior year. I've been plugged into AEOP for a lot of my high school career. I was a part of the GEMS program, which is super awesome, for a couple of years, and also the SEEK program, which is a year-long internship at an Army base. And I did that at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. We also have a special guest this evening, Dr. Toni Sondergeld. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm from Drexel University. I'm an associate professor there, and I teach statistics and research classes. For about the last decade or more, I've served on different college admissions boards. I help make scholarship decisions, and over the last year, I had the privilege of going through the college admissions process with my son, who is a senior in high school. So I've seen this process from both sides.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight, Dr. Sondergeld. So I guess we'll start this webinar with, a breakdown of the 4 years of high school and sort of a guide of things to remember during each year that will really help prepare you for the college process. So we'll start with 9th to 10th grade. This is really like the beginning of high school. The most important thing for you to do here is to explore your passions. So there are lots of ways you can do this. For example, one of them would be joining clubs and other extracurricular activities that are interesting to you. The other could be pursuing personal projects. This one is really awesome because let's say you're interested in coding. There's no better way to learn about coding than to try, for example, starting your own website or coding a game. There's so much you can learn just by doing something on your own that I'd highly recommend it if it's something that you're interested in. The next set of things to start considering is signing up for advanced or AP classes. So advanced classes really help prepare you for college level courses and also give you a more in-depth view of any topic that you're interested in. So often many schools won't let you sign up for AP classes in 9th grade, but at the end of that year, when you're choosing your course selection for 10th grade, it's something that's really helpful to keep in mind. The most important thing about AP classes is to only take those, I would recommend that you take those classes in subjects that you're really passionate about. Because they're AP, they're going to be a lot harder than your normal classes, and it's just a lot more of an enjoyable experience when you're putting in the extra time and effort in something that you really care about. Something else that I would like to recommend is to sign up for summer programs. So as you're exploring your passions, it's really cool to do that with a sort of structured group. And an amazing way to do that is through, for example, the AEOP summer programs. For example, GEMS, which is gains in, I believe, engineering, or gains in, sorry, I'm blanking on this, but I will say it's an amazing program. I've done it for a couple of years, where you're introduced in engineering and math and science, and you pursue projects with peers and also near-peer mentors who help guide you to really figure out if STEM is your passion. And the last thing that I would say is to consider signing up for SAT subject tests. So if you don't know what subject tests are, basically they're 1-hour exams that will focus in on a specific topic to prove your proficiency in it to a college. Something you could do is look at any colleges you're interested in and see if they have any requirements. So many schools will say they require 1 math and 1 English subject test, or if, for example, if you're going into a engineering program, they might require a math and physics subject test. So what I'd recommend is you think about what subject test your school requires and see which ones you already qualify for. For example, if you're a 10th grader and you're already taking pre-calculus, you can go ahead and take the math subject test while that knowledge is still fresh in your mind. All right, Dr. Sondergeld, do you have anything to add?
Just that I know that when you're starting high school, thinking about college is maybe not the thing that is on your mind at that moment, but it is not too early to start thinking about college. Everything you do in high school matters. And if you want to go to a highly competitive institution, it's really important to make sure that you're doing well in your early years as well.
Absolutely. All right. So on to our next phase, which is 11th grade or junior year. So this is the time of year that most students see as like the hardest part of all of the high school experience. And this is because you're now really at the time where you're no longer a beginner in the whole high school experience, and you're really starting to look forward to your future. And so one of the best things that can prepare you for the college application process and also just your personal growth would be gaining leadership skills. So for example, those clubs and extracurricular activities that you were a part of during 9th and 10th grade year, you can find the ones that you were most passionate about, the ones you're most interested in, and gain a leadership position in those. That could be, for example, a cabinet role such as president, vice president, or secretary, or also there are other ways to be a leader that don't involve a title. For example, if you're a part of a club and you see a way that the club could be improved, just take initiative and propose a way that you can reform or change a part of the club to impact your community. All of these things you can do without a title, but you're still exercising your leadership skills and really showing that you have the ability to improve the world around you. All right, so the next thing is definitely one of the biggest parts of 11th grade, which is taking standardized tests, so the SAT or ACT. So that they both have different formats. The SAT is broken into 2 sections, which are reading and math, along with an optional essay component. And the ACT is broken into many more sections, for example, reading, math, and there's also a science component. What you can do is, for example, take practice tests to see which one of these tests fit you better. They're very different. In my experience, the ACT was much more fast-paced and required a broader range of knowledge, whereas the SAT just had longer individual sections. So what you can do, for example, is take the PSAT or take practice tests that are available for free online in both, see which one fits you better, and start taking those tests. Something I'd recommend is if you just finished 10th grade, you can start practicing over the summer. As you get into your junior year, you realize that once you're taking a bunch of AP classes, you don't have as much time on your hands as you did before. So even though, for example, we're in a really unfortunate situation, lots of our summer plans have been canceled, but we can really capitalize on this opportunity to maybe get ahead on our standardized testing and doing some practice tests. All right, so the next thing would be to start building a list of colleges that interest you. So hopefully over the past couple of years of high school, you've been taking classes that you like, joining extracurriculars, and you've discovered something that you're super interested in. Let's say you're super interested in coding and computer science. One thing that you could do is start building a list of colleges that have, for example, very strong computer science programs. Junior year is super important to start building your college list because it's really at the end of this year and the summer after junior year that you're going to want to start preparing all of your essays and applying to these colleges. So having a better idea of where you want to apply to in 11th grade can be super helpful and relieve yourself of a lot of stress instead of cramming to see where you want to apply and applying all in 1 year. And we'll go a little bit more into how to choose a college that best fits you later. So the next thing to do in 11th grade, near the end of the year, was to talk to your teachers and counselors to see if they're willing to write you letters of recommendation. So many colleges require you to send in a letter of recommendation from your teacher and counselor. Recommendation letters from your teacher are basically to show that you're an engaged student, you have things to offer to your class, and letters of recommendation from your counselor are more so to show that you're involved in your school's community and that you're a contributing member of your school. Sorry. And so what you want to do is start asking the teachers way beforehand if they're willing to write you these letters of recommendation. Because if you're like me and you go to a public school where they have 600 students in your grade, lots of people are going to go asking their teachers. And the worst thing you want is for a teacher to feel overwhelmed, because then, they won't be able to write you a great recommendation letter if 50 students are going to them, So it's really helpful to get in there early, see which teachers you have connected well with, what classes you enjoyed the most and shown the most initiative in. And that's exactly where you can go to ask for your recommendation letters. Also, you can meet with your counselor beforehand just to, if you haven't met them before, to drop in and say hi, show them a bit what you're doing around the school, what clubs you're interested in, just so they know a little bit about you before they're required to write those letters. All right, so the next thing to do would be to go deeper into the topics that you found interesting. For example, if you're interested in STEM, you could go into specified summer programs like SEEP. So SEEP does a full summer-long internship at a Army facility that's closest to you and fits your interests the best. This is super helpful because not only are you getting real-life work experience, but you're able to network with lots of professionals in the field and see what sort of career will be awaiting you depending what college degree path you decide to take. It's also super helpful to be around motivated peers because they can also show you different avenues of thinking and maybe different colleges you might be interested in just by being around them. So that's also really great. If you're interested in arts, maybe you could consider producing and showing your own works of art through social media or internships for young artists. So really just think about how you can put yourself out there and explore your skills even more and just grow as a person. That's the main goal of the college application process. They say that you're trying to impress the colleges, but that's not really what you're doing. The best way to quote unquote impress colleges is to be yourself and to grow into like a truly developed, cultured, experienced human being. So that leads to the last part, which is senior year. You're in for the last final couple yards. What to do over the summer is super important. Review that college list that you began to make in junior year and make a final list of colleges that you plan to apply to. This is super helpful because colleges have this thing called early action or early decision, which are basically when you get to apply to a college before the quote unquote normal time or regular decision, which basically means that you're going to be in a pool with less students. This can be helpful, for example, if you are really committed to a school and you know you want to go there, you can apply early, get in early, and so you'll save lots of the stress of applying or submitting applications later. So identify where you want to go early so you can start writing those essays. You want to start drafting your personal statement over the summer. Your personal statement is, I believe, around a 500-word essay that is sent to every single college you're applying to. It's, I would say, like a super important part of your application because it shows your personality apart from your statistics and numbers. So start thinking of the experiences you've had over the past 4 years. You can become super like introspective and reflective of thinking of different times where you've grown the most and thinking of what has changed you through high school. These are all really great topics to think about while you're writing your personal statement. So get writing that early and don't feel bad if you need to like just completely scrap an essay idea. The most important part of writing is truly editing. So don't be afraid of like removing entire paragraphs and adding things in. It's really just it's supposed to be a platform where you can make your voice and your personality shine. Also, get familiar with the common and coalition applications. So those are the two main ways that you're able to submit your college application to many colleges. Typically, these are open over the summer, and you're able to go in and add the colleges that you're interested in applying to, and it will show you, for example, the supplemental essays that each college requires. Supplemental essays would just be other essays in addition to your personal statement that the colleges would want you to fill out just to get to know you a little bit more and to see if you're a great fit for the school. And lastly, during your senior year, what you want to do is follow up with the recommenders who said that they would write your college recommendation letters over junior year. Make sure they're still willing and remind them of your deadlines. For example, super important if you plan on applying early action or early decision, let them know so they know where to send that to and who to send it to. And the last thing would be don't neglect all of those leadership roles. Just because you are now a senior doesn't mean like you can let everything go. Contrary to popular belief, senior year is still very much a hectic and important year of high school. So continue to grow your leadership skills. As I mentioned before, whether that be through a presidential role or cabinet role in a club, and also just being super involved in your community. All right, and with that, I think I will pass it on to Katie.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So now that we kind of have an idea of where each of us are individually in the college application process, I'm going to go through some specific tips on how to actually write those applications and essays. So the first thing is about the college application itself. The very most important thing is to know all your deadlines and all the instructions of your application. Some deadlines will come really, really fast, and they'll come in the fall of your senior year and things like that. Other ones will come much later, and you have a lot more time. So just make sure you plan ahead and space those out so you're not rushing to finish them or actually miss those deadlines. And then also reading the instructions carefully is very important. Some have very specific essay formats. For example, the length, the word count, even the spacing or the font size. So just make sure you really follow those carefully. I've heard people say before that part of the application itself is how well you follow the instructions. So make sure that's a really important thing to do. The next thing is, as Melissa mentioned, getting recommendations. And I would say including very diverse recommendations. So whether it's teachers obviously are very important in school counselors, but also employers if you've had a job, whether it be STEM related or not. I was a part of a Boy Scout troop. So if you have, a Boy Scout leader or another extracurricular leader who could give you a recommendation as well, that can speak a lot. On that note, make sure to thank your recommenders. A thank you note goes a long way, but even a quick email that says, "Hey, thanks, I really appreciate it," and follow up with them. Let them know if you got in or if you got that. On that note, I will say that the tips I'm giving you now, sure, they're for college applications, but keep in mind they're also very helpful for scholarship applications. So they kind of go hand in hand. To continue, schoolwork is very, very important in your college application, but make sure you hit all of those extracurriculars and outside of school works too, even including your interests. So, I really enjoy gardening and in my free time, I love to ski. Things like that are very important to show that you're well-rounded and that you're not just school. That shows that you could add a lot to the campus and other school activities as well. And finally, make sure to review your application with an advisor, mentor, even your parents. Just having someone look over it to spell check to make sure you got everything. I always used to ask my mom, what did I do when I was a sophomore in high school? I can't remember all the clubs I was in. And it was really helpful to make sure I included everything there. So the next step is writing your essay, which usually comes in several different forms in your applications. This includes your personal statement, like Melissa was talking about, a broad statement of kind of who you are and why you want to go to this school. That being said, make sure you really tailor that to each different school or application you're applying to. For example, if you're applying to a really small STEM school versus a bigger school like MIT, make sure you specify, why a larger or smaller school respectively is right for you. Shows a lot if you can visualize those. You want to be as creative as possible. That's something that can really make you stand out. I remember writing an essay. I can't remember what the topic was, but I wrote it from the perspective of my cat. I sort of made it a narrative essay where I talked about, I kind of changed the perspective, and you kind of thought it was me the whole time, and then it ended up being my cat's voice. Whatever it may be, but as long as you're sticking to the prompt, I think it's really helpful to be creative. Keeping in mind that while you're using a personality, you want to keep your writing professional as well. So as always, make sure you have people proofread, spell check, things like that. Reading your essay out loud helps a lot. You catch some errors that you might not have just reading it. But again, I think it's worthwhile being creative and really being yourself. I'm sure Dr. Sondergeld can speak more to that and reading a lot of essays and what you guys sort of look for, but that's something I would say in particular. Finally, on that note, write about what you want, not what you think the reviewers or people reading it want to hear. So, of course, you want to answer the prompt, but if if you try to talk yourself up for, say, I'm in this many clubs and these many amazing things, that's great. But speak more to your experience of those things, not just numbers or these awards you've won. What do those things mean to you? What do you really want them to know that might be beyond the prompt? Do you have anything to add, Dr. Sondergeld?
I do. I have a couple of things to add here. When you have to do your Common App essay, this is an essay that goes to every college that you're applying to through the Common App. And the last prompt on the Common App, because they give you maybe 12 prompts to write to, the last one is write anything you want. And one of the things that my son did, and that we were told from his school that was a good idea to do, is take a piece that you worked on in your English class. And that piece has already something that you worked on, that students gave you peer feedback on, that you got feedback from your teacher, something that's pretty well refined. And you can even take that piece and narrow it down then to the guide, to the length. And now you have a pretty good piece you're already starting with, and you don't have to start from scratch necessarily. And also, people on the other side don't want to know all the programs you were in for this essay. We see that in other ways through all of the other documentation you sent. If you want to tell us about how meaningful Sunday dinners are for you and your family, and you want to give us some really great description of what that's like, that's something that's going to touch us. And we really like to see that because we want to see you in this. One other last piece is not just the Common App, but when you're doing essays for specific schools, perhaps if you want to apply to NYU, they're going to ask you, why NYU? They're going to say, why our college? And you really want to know why that institution. And it's not just because you're in a city that I want to go to. That's not going to get you very far. And what I can tell you is make sure that you do some research. Look at the classes they offer. Talk about those things. And also, you can actually do research online. What should I put in this particular essay for this particular school? And you'll get some good hints online too.
Great. Thank you very much. So another phase that could come in the college application process or for a scholarship is an interview. Some schools, if you're going into maybe a more specialized program or an honors program or something like that, might require an interview more than traditional applications, but it's still something very useful for the college and scholarship application process going forward. The number one thing, as Dr. Sondergeld just said, is do your research. Going into your interview, make sure you know about who's interviewing you, whether it be the school or a specific position, and just make sure you really show them why you. In doing so, make sure to maintain eye contact and a confident posture. I learned from a workshop I went to on interviews to sit at the edge of your chair, so it kind of forces you to sit up straight. I think hand gestures are a good thing, but just make sure you're using them appropriately. Along with that, dress to impress. Make sure you're wearing business casual at least. You want to feel confident too. I noticed that something with myself is that if I like the way I dress, I feel confident and I'm excited to talk about what I'm there to talk about. So make sure you have some business clothes going into an interview. Also come prepared with resumes or other resources that they might need. You might not be asked to bring those things, but it's always nice to have them on hand just in case. More than likely, your interviewer will have those, printed out if you had to send them beforehand. But again, it's really preferable to bring this with you and show that you really came prepared and thought about this ahead of time. And then finally, consider practicing interview questions beforehand with your peers or teachers. Something I really enjoy doing is sitting down with my friends and just asking them these questions beforehand, not necessarily for them to build out a script, but so that they have an idea going into it what they might say. You might think of a very specific example of a time you worked in a team that you want to talk about, or it's worth thinking about, specific challenges you've overcome or things like that. So you go into the interview just having a bit of an idea and a few talking points. Overall, it's just be yourself and again, be confident, shake hands, make eye contact, be excited. I've been told at interviews before that they've never seen someone with so much energy, and I go into interviews with more energy than I probably have in other times, but I just want to show them that I want this opportunity, and it is worth it to them to put their time into interviewing me.
And I would say, sitting on the other side of interviews, you're nervous.
Yeah.
Are, and that's okay. We are not expecting perfection. We're expecting you to come and just talk to us about you and let us get to know you. And we are not expecting you to blow us out of the water. You don't have to say something tremendously profound. We just want to get to know you and why you would be a good fit for us and why we would be a good fit for you. So, and one last thing, thank your interviewers on the way out. I don't know if we can say shake hands anymore, but thank them.
Yeah, absolutely. And come with your own questions too. As Dr. Sondergeld just said, it's definitely, they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them to make sure you're a good fit. So now Melissa and I are going to tell you a little bit about how we chose our colleges. It's helpful. I always ask people for advice going into this process, and I think it was really helpful. So briefly on my end, so I ended up going to Colorado School of Mines, which is right outside of Denver, Colorado. It's a very small engineering school. There are about 4,000 undergrad students and 1,000 graduate students, so it's fairly small. One of the main reasons I chose this school was location. I grew up in New Mexico, and my family was going to move to Colorado anyway to retire, so I wanted to be close to them. For me, thinking about the jump from high school to college was a big move. I was very excited about it and very confident in that step, but I was nervous to be far from home. So being just a several-hour drive away, knowing I could go home on weekends if I needed to, was really helpful for me. Another reason I chose Mines was because of the size. So I actually had not heard of Colorado School of Mines going into my college search junior year. I actually learned of it because of AOP. I competed in the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium and met a couple students there that had gone to that school. And it really opened my eyes up to some smaller universities that I hadn't seen right off the bat. And immediately I liked how small it was, and I knew that it would be more centered around the students, and there'd be more one-on-one focus. And especially once I looked more into it, I knew I wanted to go into their physics program, which was especially small. There were about 45 people in my graduating physics class. So it was really nice to know that I would make really close connections going into it. And as a more quiet to myself person, that meant a lot to me. And then finally, Mines has a very unique academic focus. They are a STEM school, and being Colorado School of Mines, there's a big mining, petroleum engineering, that sort of focus. But on top of that, of course, they've grown to mechanical engineering and physics and all of these other fields. But I really liked that they were so specialized. I knew in being so specialized that I would have a very good physics background, but also that I would get to dabble in so many other engineering fields because of how specialized those programs were. So I ultimately, I actually even reached out and spoke to a few professors before applying there and before choosing it to make sure that the physics department was just what I wanted. And yeah, that's ultimately kind of what made me use it. And I ended up falling in love with it. So Melissa, how about you?
Yeah, so I guess I'll be an incoming freshman at Harvard, so I can't speak like on the back end as having already gone through that experience, but I can go through like a little beforehand what motivated me to choose. So I guess my experience has been a little different since lots of the admitted student opportunities were canceled. So I didn't really have an opportunity to go physically to any of the schools I was admitted to. So lots of my decision had to be based primarily on my experience with current students, as well as what I could get from professors, my peers who are also admitted, and from of course, the website. So I guess the first thing that really appealed to me was the really like the plethora of extracurricular activities and opportunities in my field of interest. So I think, Katie, you already knew you were interested in like physics, and you really like that idea of specialization. I don't really have one particular field that I know I want to go into. I do know that I'm interested in global health, and there are so many ways that I could be involved in that. I'm not exactly sure which way particularly would be my path. And so one of the reasons I chose Harvard was because they had so many different extracurricular activities related to public health. For example, from the data side to actually pre-med, so many different tracks that I thought that would be really helpful for me to be able to explore. Also, I really like the idea of having so many connections right there. Since there are so many grad schools and it's a relatively large school, the undergraduates really have the advantage of being able to intern and maybe like do research at many of these different sites. And since I, of course, didn't have one particular area I know I want to go into, it's super helpful that I have such a wide array of laboratories and research topics that I can pursue more in depth. So as for academic focus, I know in general that I like to go into the sciences, and of the schools that I was deciding in between, Harvard had the largest STEM program. That would also allow me to take classes in the liberal arts, like in English and humanities. So that's something that was super important to me, because even though I know I want to go into STEM, English classes were for some reason always my favorite classes in school. So I just needed to find a place where I could do a balance between those two interests of mine. Also, back on academic focus, one of the reasons that I chose Harvard was because even though people are super invested in school, there's like sort of a culture that I've perceived so far that people are also super invested in their extracurricular activities. Like, we all know we have to do well in school, but we really get life experience from those internships and from those clubs. And so I really like the idea of going somewhere where like my efforts are valuable both inside and outside of the classroom. And lastly would be size. I come from a smaller school, and so I've been, for example, I've had the same classmates from kindergarten through 8th grade. It was a small school of like 50 students in my grade. And then I went to a slightly larger high school that had 500 to 600 students in my grade. And I found that I really liked the big jump of having a wider pool of students for me to meet and talk to. So that really made me show that, well, it really showed me that I don't really want to go to like a smaller school. So for me, I like the idea of having like so many different ranges of types of people I can talk to, and almost being able to, I guess, meet someone new every time I leave my room. So that's something I really am interested in. So yeah, those are the three things that really motivated my decision.
In terms of decisions, ladies, you've had your reasons are really impressive and right on for why you should make a decision about college. But one thing I want to bring in here too is for a lot of people, it's not just a personal decision, it's a family decision. And you're going to want to make sure that you're talking to your parents about, is it okay if I go to an out-of-state school? Is it okay if I apply to private schools? College is expensive and private schools are very, very expensive. So if you need to be staying at an in-state school, you want to know that, and you want to have these conversations. Maybe your parents are okay with you going a state or two away, but they don't want you going all the way across the country. Maybe that's not what's going to be the best fit for your family. So make sure that, it hopefully it's ultimately your decision in the end, but there are a lot of factors that come into play in terms of families as well.
Absolutely. And I just add on to that, to not be afraid. Private schools, like you mentioned, are often very, very expensive, but don't be afraid of applying to them, because often they can have special scholarship programs, or even if they don't give scholarships, they can have really good financial aid. So be sure to complete your financial aid application. Be sure to complete your FAFSA. Something that I didn't know about until it was like halfway through the application season is the CSS profile. So lots of schools can have a bunch of different ways for you to complete their financial aid application. So really make sure that you're doing everything you need for all of those schools, because you worked so hard to get in, and now it's really important for you to be able to afford it too.
And with also that in mind, a lot of you guys don't check your emails as well as you should. And colleges are going to communicate with you through email. So if you need to fill out that FAFSA, or if you need to fill out that CCI profile, it's going to come to you through email. And that's their way to connect with you. So make sure you're watching email during this important time.
Absolutely. All right. And I think we can move on to some questions from the audience. The first one, I think, says, how important do you think a campus visit is? What should I look for when I visit? Do you feel you missed something by not visiting? All right, so I will say that campus visits are typically beneficial. So I did mention that I wasn't able to go to any of the schools I applied to this year. However, in my junior year, I did 2 college visits just to my local universities. And so those, I think, were super helpful, because not having any sort of college visits meant that I didn't really know what to expect. But having had 2 college visits made me see, oh, this is how a school chooses to promote themselves. And knowing what they are emphasizing in their college visits helps you understand what the school stands for. Also, when you're actually on campus, you can get a really good understanding of the quote-unquote vibe of the college, which is basically just how the students interact with each other, the general sentiment of those on campus. And so that is something that I do think I missed out on. However, because we weren't able to go in person, the colleges made a really big effort to have the same sort of thing online. So instead of having an in-person admitted student day, we had lots of video calls with admitted students. They paired us with current students as like mentors, so we can talk to them and ask them questions. And we had lots of panels. So it wasn't the exact same as seeing what it would have been like, but it was helpful enough to understand what the students are like. And I think it's really important just to see how you were able to interact with the current students, see if like you fit in, if you find a group of people there. So I think that was helpful. In terms of what to look for when you visit, one tip that I got was to look at the posters that are up on campus, because the posters will show you what the students are currently doing. So you can see if it's a super artsy school, if they have like 3 different theater performances happening that week, or you can see like a super technical school if they have like robotics club competitions, for example. So it's also a really great way to see if students are engaged. If the posters haven't been updated in like a couple months, maybe it shows you that the extracurricular scene on campus isn't really as heavily emphasized as the classroom. So that's definitely one thing I would that I think would be super important to consider.
Yeah, I would add a couple things too from my my experience touring schools. So I did go to get to visit mines before I accepted, and I agree with everything Melissa said. All of that stuff to look out for, and that's valuable, is really great. I would add that I actually was able to set up a meeting. My parents encouraged this, but was able to set up a meeting with financial aid while I was there. So we actually met with the financial aid office. They laid out exactly what it was going to look like, and they talked about scholarship options as well. So that really, really helped going into it, because that gave us a sense of, can we do this? How hard should I work my senior year to get scholarships for this, and things like that. And another thing that I found useful as an incoming freshman was that we had the opportunity to go into several different dorm buildings. So when I was applying and could request, my top choices for dorms, I had an idea of what those looked like. I know that might be different now and this year in particular, but that was something useful for sure, to see the amenities right there. So another question is for Dr. Sondergeld. How can I identify scholarships for my school, and is there a trick to winning them?
I'm going to piggyback on what Katie just said there. I would think one of the best ways to look for scholarships for the particular institution you want to go to is contact the admissions office. Many admissions offices have someone specific that is there just to help kids find scholarships. And those scholarships might not be institution specific. If you are going into a STEM field and if you sit and talk with this person and tell them, what are your hobbies? What are the things you like? They're going to help you try to find scholarships that would be fitting for you. And the way to win them is you have to fit the criteria. First off, if you don't fit the criteria and you apply for it, you've wasted your time and we just kick you to the side. We're not going to even review your application if you don't meet the basic criteria. So it's not worth applying for the ones that you don't actually fit. And, in terms of whatever you write, make sure that you have really good grammar and spelling and tell us why it should be you.
Great, thank you. I'll say from my end too, as I just said, once I spoke to my financial aid office, they identified certain scholarships that the school had going in for any students, and they varied in amount based on in-state or out-of-state tuition. And then they also varied on, in my case, our ACT scores. So they actually were not needs-based or demographic-based at all. It was actually fully on your test score. So that gave me kind of a goal point for when I actually took those tests. So another question, applying for college is super expensive. How did you narrow down your search to an affordable group? So that is very true, and that's something that absolutely came up in my family's discussions. I have an older sister who had just finished college. She was a senior when I was a freshman, so my parents were definitely making sure that I was conscious of what the cost was going to be. I knew I grew up in New Mexico, and there was a school there that I was definitely looking at, and I had applied to and visited. But I really, really wanted to go to that out-of-state school. And fortunately, in my family's case, my parents had already planned on moving to Colorado. So after the first year, I ended up having in-state tuition, which was much lower. But I definitely did narrow down my initial list based on price. So in Colorado, if you look at again the private schools versus the in-state tuitions, they do vary a lot. In my case, a larger school like University of Colorado in Boulder was a lot more expensive than mine's, both with incredible programs and very, very great schools. So it is just worth looking. But really, I think it came down to my family and I just sat down and figured out, here's what we can do. And that gave me motivation to, if something was a little bit higher in price, to really work for scholarships. Fortunately, mine's had a lot of scholarships that really helped us out and made that an affordable option for us. But again, I think it's just worth having that discussion with your family and thinking about it yourself if you'll be the one taking on your loans. So, yeah.
I just, Katie, I think that's a great response. And if you're talking specifically about the application fees as well, and applying to a reasonable amount of institutions, I think I like to say, first off, there are fee waivers for applying if you meet the criteria. Additionally, keep in mind you want to apply to a safety school, as in this is a place I should get into no problem. You also want to apply to a target school or two, and then you want to apply just to a couple reach schools. Ladies, does this sound familiar to you?
Absolutely.
And you can figure that out also by looking online and finding out what the average ACT, SAT scores are, and the average high school GPAs of the incoming freshman class, as to whether that's going to be a reach school for you or whether that's going to be a target or something that you should easily get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just add one more thing, just to echo a bit what you said, Dr. Sondergeld, to check your emails. So often, if you're applying to state schools, they may have certain, I guess, like honors programs or honors like scholarships that you qualify for that you don't necessarily have to apply separately for. But the only way, for example, that you got an interview for that is if you're constantly checking your email to see if they send you something. So I definitely say make sure to do that. Also, when I was narrowing down my colleges, I think I initially took out some colleges that were known to not give a lot of financial aid, but I kept lots of private schools that did give financial aid. So definitely don't initially cross like private schools off your list just because like the sticker price is super expensive, because it's super common for like private schools to be able to afford to give you good financial aid.
And it's really important. All of this information is online. If you are really interested in somewhere, just start to do some research and find out what their typical aid package is.
Absolutely. All right. So the next question is, I really want to go to a specific college, but my first year of high school wasn't perfect. If my test scores are not exactly what the college wants, should I not apply? All right. So I would first say, do not ever count yourself out. No matter what year you're in, don't count yourself out from college. So the first thing I would say is your freshman year is really, I'd say college counselors and the people reading your applications will know that it's a year of transition. It's of course going to be different. So your grades may not be perfect, but that's okay, because the most important thing to show on your transcript is that you're able to improve. So let's say you got like all B's for your freshman year. What you can do to really show that you're a strong student is, for example, just try super hard in your next year to go get help when you need it, to really tighten down your study schedule, to really figure out how you learn best, and try really hard to just get better grades in your following years. To show that, for example, if you have a passion and you take an honors course in that class, to show that you're able to maintain your grades in those courses. So I definitely would not say to not apply to that college because of your grades in freshman year, because you have three more years to show improvement. And as long as there's like an upward trend, I'd say that's always better than anything else. Let's see. Also, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Sondergeld.
That is absolutely true. And also at the end of your Common App, there's a specific box at the end that allows you to give information on why you might have had a transcript issue or something. It's a space where you get to tell them anything you think is important for them to know. And if you had a rough freshman year, or even you had a rough course in your sophomore year, one particular course, that's something to write about. Don't ignore it. Give information on it and explain it, and talk about how you grew from that experience.
Absolutely. And to the second part of the question, saying that your test scores weren't exactly what the college wants, I'd say there isn't necessarily an exactly what the college wants when it comes to test scores. Of course, when you go online, you'll see that there's a typical range, like the 25th to 75th percentile, which basically show what the average student is getting. That you can definitely use that as a metric to see what would be, for example, the target and breach schools and safety schools. But that's not the only thing that they're looking for in the application. So test scores are just a way to standardize, to see how you compare against other students in that one way. But of course, a lot of who you are comes apart from your test score. It comes from what you're doing and how you show your passion for your interests in through your extracurriculars and also through your essays.
Great. So our next question is that I'm a junior and future engineer, and the AAP program I had my heart set on was canceled due to COVID. What do you suggest I can do to make the most of the summer? First off, I'm very sorry that happened. I know the situation is impacting us all very differently, and that's very disappointing. So you have a right to be a little bummed out, and I know where you're at, and I understand how frustrating that is. So I have a couple of suggestions. I have a lot of friends who had internships and even jobs canceled for the summer. So I I've had this conversation with a lot of people as my own plans were on the line as well. So the first thing I would say is be creative and take that as you will. But it could be one, doing your own projects. So coming up with ways to keep yourself busy still in engineering and STEM over the summer. I have made so many trips to Home Depot in the last month doing home projects that, it's been great to have this time. And it's a way to improve your engineering skills. One of the things I'm working on is, as I said before, I really like gardening. So I built a little Arduino computer system to monitor my garden and how watered my plants are and things like that. And I would not have had the time to do that otherwise. So be creative in doing your own things. I would say another thing is still try to find programs. I don't think it's too late. I know, a lot of schools are still in session for the rest of this month. So I think it's worth still trying to apply and look for programs that are ongoing, whether they be online or in person. I just had a friend whose internship got canceled, and within that week, she applied and got a different internship. Actually, at our state Department of Transportation. So whatever it is that you're interested in, I think companies and programs are trying to do a lot to make up for those things that have been canceled. Um, it might be worth reaching out to professors and teachers too and seeing if they have ideas um, in terms of programs you can apply for, or maybe there's work you can help with. I think there are a lot of options. Again, it's definitely a bummer that the program we really wanted to do was canceled. Um, on that note, hopefully you can do it next summer or in the future. And I would say don't give up and keep trying to see what things are out there. Melissa, do you want to take the next one?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I think my audio
No,
was
you're
off
good.
there. All right. So the next the next question is, how do you believe your AEOP experiences have shaped your applications, your schools, and your general choices for the university? All right. So I definitely have a lot to say about this because I've been through so many AEOP programs for every stage of my high school and also late middle school experiences. Um, so as I mentioned, I started off doing the GEMS program, which has been super cool. So it's a 1-week program at an Army base, and I did this at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. And the goals of these programs were basically to expose you to different sorts of biomedical sciences. And so it was super helpful because I have near peer mentors who are current students in, for example, biomedical engineering or biology, who like informally would just tell me about their experiences and what they're learning about. I'd also learn about whatever they're passionate about. So, for example, one day we were walking back from lunch and we found these like baby squirrels sitting under a tree because it had like rained really hard. And one of the near peer mentors was, I believe, double majoring in biology and environmental sciences. And we had this entire idea of how to create a little dome to house the squirrels, to nurse them until they're a little larger and can like go back into the wild. And so it was just like these like small experiences where their own passions would shine through what they did. That really motivated me to see what I'm interested in and exposed me to what they like. The next thing that I did was the SEEP program. So this is an science engineering and apprenticeship program that normally lasts over the summer. And I started doing this also at Walter Reed in a bacteriophage therapeutics lab. So basically, it's super cool. Basically, our work was to find different viruses that are able to target and kill specific bacteria. And so it was super fun. But what that experience showed me was that I didn't really like the sort of investigative sort of science research where we're just searching for something that works in this situation. And I think that was super beneficial because it showed me the difference between, for example, a biology degree and a biomedical engineering degree, or a biology degree and a biochem degree. And so during that summer, I told my mentor about like my interests, and she actually helped me tour different labs so I could get exposed to other sorts of work and network with other people with different backgrounds. And so that was super foundational in helping me narrow down my interests a bit more, which led me to my current lab where I'm doing vaccine research along with some global health stuff. So that has been a super important experience because networking, talking to people, seeing what degree gets you where, I believe is super helpful. And definitely would recommend those programs to anyone who's interested in any sort of science.
Yeah, and I'll definitely add my side to this too. I love this question. So I competed in the JSHS, the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium, my junior and senior year of high school. And going into it, I I had done science expos in my high school, and since I was in 5th grade, I loved science and I loved doing the expos. But to be honest, there was not a lot of support at it in my local high school, and I could not find a professor who was interested in helping me find STEM colleges and who really wanted to push me. So very fortunately, I did find a professor who was involved with AAP, and she showed me this program, this opportunity, and I was like, I'm going to go all in. I want to study physics, and no one at my high school is helping me do that. So I ended up partnering with a professor at Los Alamos National Laboratories, which was close to my home. And I decided when I was 15 that I was going to learn quantum physics. And I never would have done that had it not been for this AAP experience. So not only did it show me that I was absolutely passionate about that and wanted to find a school that I could further learn that, but JSHS specifically really helped me with my presentation skills, my writing skills, and ultimately my confidence. And not having that experience, I don't know if I would have been as confident applying to these big STEM schools that I did, having just done, the local school science fair and things like that. Not to discredit that at all. I just think, especially as a woman applying to a physics program, this really helped me and really showed me that I could do it. And continuing, I did that back when I was 14, and now I am 23. Wow, that's crazy to think that that this journey has gone by so fast. But anyway, I've been involved in AAP throughout my entire college career, and looking back on it, I think now I could talk about this for hours, but it makes me really grateful that I was involved in those programs, but also the importance of giving back to those programs and helping other people along their own journeys. So I guess this is a bit unrelated from the question, but I would just, if you're involved in AAP now or any similar program, give back and pay it forward and continue on to those programs through your college process. You never know what other opportunities and doors it could open in terms of internships and jobs and things like that. But it also just, if you're going into the STEM field, you want those following you in the STEM field to continue what you've started. So it's important to pay it forward and contribute.
Absolutely. Also, as you were speaking, you reminded me that I just wanted to say that there's no such thing as a bad apprenticeship or intern experience, because you can learn from everything. I remember that one summer, I accidentally signed up for the mechanical engineering GEMS program. And at first it wasn't an accident. I thought I would love it. Anyway, I ended up going, and I was like, oh my goodness, everyone, what is this, physics? And I know Katie would have thrived there. But for me, the experience really made me realize that mechanical engineering was not the intended path for my life. So even though I just want to say that there's no such thing as a bad experience. Even if you don't find that you're the happiest there, the fact that you found that you didn't like that is super helpful for your future. Because who knows, maybe I would have said I want to go pursue mechanical engineering as my college degree, and I wouldn't have known what was coming from me. So that was super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one final question, again, for Dr. Sondergeld. You have been on both sides of this process. So what would you say is the most important idea to keep in mind when applying for universities?
All right, I'm going to go back to a concept that I already mentioned a little earlier, and that's fit. Really, I think that the most important thing here is that you're finding a place that's good for you, and that the institution, you have to understand, they're looking to see if you're going to be good for them as well. Yes, right now it's a primary goal to get admitted and to get in, but the ultimate goal is to complete that degree and be successful in your field. And if you don't make it, and you want to make sure that the place you're going to go to is really going to help nurture you and get you to where you want to be. If you need to be in a big institution because that's where you're going to thrive, is with lots of hustle and bustle all over, then that's great and that's good for you. But it's really what program, what people, what setting is going to be the best for you. And one last thing is, I just want to say, don't hesitate to reach out to people. Reach out to the admissions department and ask them to help you get in contact with faculty members. faculty members will talk to you. They want to talk to you. Ask to talk to other students as well. That's a good way to decide if it's a good fit for you or not.
All right. Well, Dr. Sondergeld, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us in the AOP membership group today. The information you've shared with us is so exceptionally helpful, and we just really thank you for joining us. And thank you all who came to view this and for tuning in tonight. I'm Katie Schneider.
I'm Melissa Jones, and thank you for coming to this presentation. I hope you learned a lot.
And we hope you tune in to the next Person to Person as well. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
For more information on Army Educational Outreach Program opportunities in your area, please visit www.usaeop.com. Thanks for watching. Join us next time on Person to Person.